So we're going to start this hangout officially at 18:31 CET, Central European Time. I don't think I've made it to be on the radio. So why are we doing this hangout? So as board members, we felt it was necessary to explain what goes on behind the scenes of being a board member at IGLYO and how it can be quite tough at times and quite fun at others. So we're hoping that people can ask us questions about what we feel like as board members are important things. Yeah, like skills to have on the board, also explaining to people how the whole process of getting elected or not, what our current board looks like, and a whole number of other things like about gender balance, geographical balance, and everything else. Okay, Dani, over to you.
The main reason is, of course, that we want to get as many people as possible more acquainted with what does it mean to be in the board, so that you can apply and be a board member yourself, because it's very important that we have as many people applying as possible from various contexts with various genders, identities, etc. Okay, so let's start with the beginning. We're gonna do a small introduction about what does it actually mean, what's up with this board, what does it do. Basically, we are a board of 8 members from 8 different countries. We have been elected by the General Assembly, which is the highest power in IGLYO, which decides what IGLYO does, what is the direction in which the organization should go, and many other important things. Each year at the General Assembly, we have board elections, which means that the board of IGLYO gets new board members every year. We do this because we want our board to be sustainable and to be able to have the knowledge in the board and build upon the knowledge that was previously developed by other board members. So every year, 4 board members are elected. So this year in Bucharest, we will have 4 new board members joining us. And the other ones, the 4 ones that will remain, have been chosen last year in Dublin. Yes. What else?
So what kind of, you mentioned knowledge, so that knowledge remains on the board. I want to explain the kind of knowledge that has, it's really useful that it remains on the board. This is everything from understanding projects that go beyond 1 year. So really understanding what has been applied for in funding, in a number of other things, and be able to bridge that gap. Because if suddenly the whole board were to disappear and a whole new board to start, then it would require a very intensive handover process, and that might be a bit of a waste of time. So this really helps keep that sort of knowledge on the board in terms of what's IGLYO working on at the moment, what the priorities and focuses are, what kind of projects have been ongoing, and also important contacts like people in member organizations. Who do we know? Who's been in touch with who? And yeah, other organizations, partner organizations. You can build relationships as you go along over a year, and it's beneficial if these don't all suddenly leave the organization as a, if all the people were to leave at once.
Yep, that's true. Of course, the Secretariat plays a very important role in how this history of the organization goes, but we try our best to have also the knowledge inside the board continued and being known by people as much as possible and future generations. Yep.
I think it's like the only fixed roles within the board. It's like the co-chairs, the treasurer, and the secretary, whereas the other roles have been very flexible. So in the past, we've had a membership officer, programs officer. This is what we have this year: programs officer, communications officer and policy. But in the past, that have been more focused on our core areas, so those education, intersectionality, social inclusion. So these roles are very flexible and reflect kind of the needs of the board in that year and what we're expected to be working on.
Mm-hmm. The roles of the board are elected by the board itself. They're not elected.
We have a listener.
Hi!
Hi, Christoph.
Welcome. So we were talking about the board roles. And I was saying that the roles in the board are elected at the first board meeting, which happens usually in January.
Yep.
So the General Assembly doesn't elect people in specific roles. They just elect people to be part of the board. And then the board decides among themselves after acknowledging the knowledge that exists in the board and the needs that the organization has. So that's how it goes.
Yeah, talking about board meetings, it's 4 board meetings a year. And while it also includes traveling to a place you might not have visited before and hanging out with some really cool people that you get to know over the year as a board, it's also really intensive. So it's like if you don't get there and you're fully rested, the 4 days or 3 days can get really tiring because there's a lot of discussions, a lot of important planning to do, and sometimes it just goes crazy. And obviously you want to spend up as much time of that as possible awake so you can spend time with each other and get to know each other more as a board. But at the same time, towards the end of it, we're generally all really tired.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's also one of the nicest moments for us as a board to reconnect and see each other and get more strength to continue for the next months and to
it acts as a kind of boost, as an energizer, because you get to see each other, and it's so hard to work online and only on emails and sending maybe a Skype call every now and again. And to be able to see each other and discuss things in person, you get things done much quicker. You don't get lost in trying to understand the person's tone of voice, and it really helps move work along smoothly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So that's with the 4 board meetings. Where usually also a secretariat participates so that we make sure that we keep on with the annual planning and also with the project proposal that we do and all the activities that have to be matched together so that we don't overlap and that everything has to be done as it should be done. Okay. What else?
What else?
If there are questions
Okay.
from our viewer, please don't hesitate to ask us.
1 second. So we do have a question, which is split into the 2 parts. What will be the consequences if one has an internship for 6 months in TZ? I don't know what TZ is. I guess it's a country. What would TZ stand for? Let's ask Google. Thereby not being able to be at the General Assembly as well as possibly 1 or 2 meetings via Skype. Okay, so I guess TZ is a country far away.
Okay, so I guess the question is whether a person who wants to be in the board and eventually gets elected, if they are not available for 6 months because they do an internship.
Internship, but outside of Europe, in Tanzania, for example. So outside of the Council of Europe region.
Okay.
I think it would be very hard to get some of the work done. I don't know. What do you find?
Yeah, I think all of us have jobs, full-time jobs or study in university. So we do understand each other in terms of not being able to participate in a certain period as much as in others. We like to keep each other informed. That's the best way it has worked so far. That's the practice we encourage, to keep each other informed, and then manage to split activities if a person is not able to contribute as much in a period. But I would say that 6 months is a very, very long period, even though it depends on the person, I guess, how much they would be able to get involved, even though they're not in Europe and are not able to participate in two board meetings, right?
Yeah, that's the question. You can see it on Twitter. I I had no time to attend the first board meeting this year. And from my experience, not that it set me back, but that was because I was previously on the board, kind of had an understanding of the workings of the board. But it was more of a setback because although I was on Skype for a few of the discussions, you can't see what everyone is saying at the same time, and it's really hard to talk to people, and maybe they'll be having side conversations, which when you're in the room with them is so much easier to follow. And so I felt it a bit difficult and a bit disheartening to not be able to participate fully in a physical board meeting. But at the same time, after this board meeting, I was still in touch online and still managed to get the work that was required of me online. Um, so yeah, so being able to work online is one of the most important things because you're actually constantly there and able to react and on things and do your work. But I had personally found it very difficult the first few weeks after that first board meeting to be around. Of course, it also depends on the time. So maybe if it's a third board meeting and not the first one, it changes things.
And I also think it's important to know what is the role that you will have in the board, because I think it will be a bit difficult to be a chair, for example, and to not be able to attend the first two meetings, or I don't know, a position that really requires you to consult with people, to meet them and discuss about things face to face. If it's a position that it's more, I don't know, focused on individual work, perhaps that might happen. That might be okay.
Yeah, but this is also something, obviously, the General Assembly, when it would be good to be honest with the General Assembly about the person's availabilities, and the General Assembly might then be the judge of that, because at the end of the day, they are the ones electing people. So if they feel that they have confidence in this person and in their ability to work online for those 6 months, then we, the board could go along with that, of course, and it would really be okay and in some ways manageable. I think in terms of the board meetings, it's more of, while you miss having someone when you're at the board meeting, it's harder to feel like you're missing out from the board meetings. But yeah. Yeah, so not being able to attend the board meetings in your life can be a bit of a impediment, but not necessarily so.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your question. It's exciting, we have a follower. I think also in addition to this, besides having board meetings that we attend, we also can represent IGLYO externally. So this means there's a number of events every year that IGLYO is invited to, and some are the same events every year. For example, the European Youth Forum's committee of members meeting, and a number of other meetings, depending on if IGLYO is a member organization, for example, of IGLYO Europe. And I don't know, we get invited to conferences, to speak at conferences, to be a part of a panel on conferences, and a number of other things. Yes, Chris. Okay. So, Dani, to update you, I'm not sure if you're following the Twitter. Chris said, thanks for the answers. If I do, I'll be clear and honest with the General Assembly. Yeah, that is the best thing, I think, for people who value honesty, or at least I believe most people do. So if they see that the person is out there and saying, listen, these are my availabilities, and being honest from the start, then it really helps even the working relationship with other board members.
Okay. Should we go into explaining a bit the election process?
Yes.
Yay. Okay, so as you know already, there's a form that you have to fill in until 15th of October.
Yes, I will show this should work. I'll be showing an item right now. I don't know if this works. Because I cannot see what I'm doing. So shown items will now be visible to your audience. So we have two items on show. One is the link to our web survey, which I will also post as a comment. So what I meant by web survey is the actual the form where you can apply to become a board member. So I've commented about that. Once again, no idea if that's appeared. Sorry, Dani, continue.
That's right. Okay, so there's the board application survey, which I see here in my right. Basically, after you fill that in, we are gonna send all the applications to the General Assembly in the email. They will be able to read all the applications and manage to get an idea about who's applying to be a board member, and take into consideration some of the criteria that we have on IGLYO. One of those is gender balance. So we try every year to have at least 3 genders represented in the board. The more, the better, of course, and also geographical balance. So I have people from all over Europe, not necessarily just not to have too many people from the north, for example, or from the west of Europe. So the General Assembly will take this into consideration, of course, but also your expertise, like what have you been doing before, what you want to do in IGLYO, how do you want to improve it, what do you feel that you could do in the organization, and things like that. So, and at the General Assembly, when we're going to meet, you will have a chance to have a coffee, so to say, with the General Assembly, which will be an informal evening when you will be able to discuss with them, and they will be able to get to know you better. They will ask questions, and you will feel like you would be interviewed in one way. At least that's what I felt last year, but it was nice. People ask you.
Yeah, some people come up with some really intense questions. So
yes, back to everything. But that shouldn't scare you though, because people are nice. They just ask you things that are important to them and that they wish to see more in here, I guess. So that's it. You will meet them, and all the candidates will have a chance to meet people. After that, you will have a chance to have a speech in front of the.
Oh, I have a question. I have a question. Hello? Hello? Is it still working?
Oh, I'm back. Okay.
Oh, that was you, not me then, because
I don't know who was there. Sorry for the. It just stopped.
no problem. I actually have a question.
Yep.
So let's say I'm interested in applying for the board. I have a member organization who's willing to support my application. However, I'm not able to attend the General Assembly. Do you have any hints or suggestions, or do you highly not recommend that, or what?
Of course, being able to attend the candidate coffee and also have your speech in front of the General Assembly matters a lot. I think it's important for people to see you and talk to you, but in the same time, I think this shouldn't be um, stopping you from applying. So I'm thinking that even though at the last General Assemblies that I attended, this didn't happen. I'm thinking that a video message where you could film your speech and we could show it to the people from the General Assembly would be an option. Also, have a really, really, really strong application and try to answer as much as possible, the best you can, the questions that are in the form. And yeah, this is all that I could suggest. Mina, if you have other.
Yeah, I think to add to that, it's actually talking about the application form again. Sometimes people apply for things and they would only answer with one sentence or two sentences. And while it's good to keep it short, it's also good to try and put out as much there, so people can also have something to ask you questions on. So if you only say, yes, I am interested in IGLYO because I've been involved in activism um, for 5 years, and you stop there, then people might only ask you, okay, what kind of LGBT activism have you been involved in the past 5 years? But if you go into a bit more depth and say, I have an experience with this and this, then people are able to structure their questions more clearly, and you would be able to give a much clearer picture of yourself. Dani, we have a new question from our follower on Twitter. So, as board or chair, respectively, how many times do you travel a year?
Well, it depends a lot. So it will be minimum 4 times, which will be the.
I'd say it's minimum 5 times.
Oh, yes, yes, that's true for the General Assembly as well.
Yeah, because we have the 4 board meetings plus the General Assembly, so that's the bare minimum. And then, according to people's availabilities, you can represent IGLYO at different external representations. This year, I have traveled. Give me a second to count.
I can say it because for me it's easier. I have traveled only once this year.
I've traveled 6 times. So I missed the first board meeting. I was at the second board meeting, but I only traveled from my house to the meeting place because it was at home in Malta. So the European Youth Forum, COMEM, and a no hate speech movement conference in Strasbourg, and Your Pride in Riga, and the study session prep team meeting for our study session on homelessness in October, and the next board meeting. So that's around 6 times, plus of course the last board meeting in December and the General Assembly. So I'd say, depending on the board member and depending on people's availabilities, between 5 and 10 times a year. But the chairs might get to travel a bit more often.
Or not. Yeah, depends a lot on
personal availability. I was very available in the middle of the year, still available now, not available at all in the beginning of the year. So we can be very flexible. Also, for the board roles, we're very flexible. The structure of the roles changed in May when I became co-chair, because IRIC could no longer be co-chair because of a change in like personal life, what else you've got going on. So things change also within the year.
Yeah, and I think this will also be the case for next year when we're gonna decide again which will be the way that we work, our roles, and all that. So I think the first board meeting is essential in one way, because you are then able to set up the rules of the board, how the board is going to work, what will be the roles, what everybody will be doing the next year, and have a really, really, really clear timeline of what is everybody going to be doing in that year.
Exactly. Okay. Do we have any last comments? We're trying to keep this to a half-hour call, not to bore people who decide to watch it later. So, Dani, any extra comments? Personal, perhaps our personal experiences on the board?
It would be nice for us both to say a bit how it was about our expectations before and the reality after of being on a board, and also what we expect, like what we thought how the board will be. So for me personally, when I applied, I think it took me a few years to decide to apply because it seemed like it was very hard to get into the IGLYO board, and I was really, I wasn't sure if I was qualified to do that. Um, so in the end, I did it, and I was very nervous, of course. But I think that people generally really support people to apply and to bring their contribution to the board and to IGLYO in general. So I felt pretty good at the General Assembly. After being elected, um, I think I was even more nervous because that's when the work was supposed to be starting, and I think I had expected it to be a lot of work. I never thought it was gonna be easy because I knew that IGLYO's board is an executive board, which means that we actually are really involved in projects in what IGLYO does. So that means that we run study sessions together with the secretariat. We contribute to grant writing and any other things that are important for IGLYO to, to be running smoothly. So I would say that these expectations was really met because the workload is there. It exists. There's a lot of work to be done, and especially as a co-chair, I feel that there's a lot of things going on that you have to be there almost every day. I think it would be hard if none of us would be available for a period of time. That's why we have two co-chairs, because there's a lot of decisions to be made. There's a lot of things to be planned. So yeah, two co-chairs is the best solution for that. Yeah, that's about it for my expectations and reality. I think, yeah, I really like after 1 year now, I think I really enjoyed being in the board. The traveling was awesome. Meeting and getting closer to people is awesome. I think also improving myself because you get a chance to meet people that are used to doing things differently, have other opinions perhaps on also on LGBTQ activism, but also on means of working. So you get a chance to expand yourself and your capacity to work in a team. Yep. And
Yeah,
you?
I think to add to that, it's definitely, so I've been both communications officer and co-chair for IGLYO now. However, I got into the board as I was co-opted last year. And the way co-option works is that another board member resigns for any reason they feel they need to resign, and if there's enough time left in their mandate and it's then the board co-opts someone else. So they release an application, and in the case of co-option, we really look at what the missing skills in the board are at that point in time. So, for example, when someone resigned last year, then there was a lack of a communications officer. So they were looking specifically for someone who had those skills, which is very different to when people are elected at the General Assembly, because it's more of a broader thing that people are looking at. So I was elected specifically for my skills in communications, and then once I got onto the board, it was halfway through a year. So it was more about filling in and supporting other board members as much as possible while learning about the organization as I went along. It was definitely very nervous. It felt like I was applying for a job. I was very excited about it, and when I got it, I was just like over the moon, because it's just so amazing to be selected to be representing LGBTQ youth in Europe. I mean, I feel very honored to have been able to do this for the past year and a half, and hope that I have helped in some way to make IGLYO grow and improve over this year and a half. So yeah, it was much easier to um, to do things when you're not the co-chair. As a communications officer, I felt like I had more time to do my tasks, and also there were very specific tasks which I knew what they were, and I knew exactly when my deadlines were, and although apart from the tasks you have as a generic board member and not as a co-chair, then you also have other tasks like being responsive to political decisions that the organization has to make and a number of other things. But as communications officer, I had very clear tasks and I knew when to do them. And that's all. It was very simple. But as a co-chair, as Dani mentioned, you need to be aware of everything that's going on in the board, but also everything that's going on in the office in Brussels. And I'm going to say hi to everyone because I know they're watching us from the office. So you really need to be aware of what's happening and able to delegate. And once if you're not delegating enough, then suddenly it feels like the whole weight of the organization is on your shoulders, and that's where you feel like you're kind of drowning in too much work. So it's really all about, as a co-chair, delegation and understanding the priorities of the organization, and learning how to keep with that pace, and really good communication above all with the other co-chair to be able to juggle days between you, because there would be some days where I know for sure I would not be available and Dani would step up a bit more to make sure that they're more responsive. So it's really all about the teamwork, about knowing your tasks, and it all makes it a bit more manageable.
What I wanted to say, adding to what you said, is that what I really appreciate about the organization is that it also gives us a space to innovate if we want to contribute, to change things. And people have been coming with suggestions about ways of, I don't know, ways of improving our work, ways of using other tools. So we're really, really um, open to a lot of suggestions when it comes to our working methods, because they are not very, how to say, set and non-negotiable. So that's why a lot of new ideas are more than welcome. And this is actually one of the things that we are searching in, for them to come up with ideas and to not be afraid to have initiative. That's one of the, for me at least, that's one of the most important qualities of a board member. So for them to have initiative and actually take responsibility of their initiative, and not only, of course, we as board member and you as future board members who want to apply, I think it's important to really, really consider if you have the time, availability to take responsibility of being part of this team for 2 years and contribute as meaningfully as you can, because we are 8 people, a few other people in the secretariat, and we really have to support each other and take care of each other, because there's a huge workload, and only if everybody does what we do, then that's the only way the organization will work smoothly and everybody will be okay.
Cool. Okay, I think there are no more questions. I would like to thank Christopher for following us from Denmark. And I would like to thank the Secretariat for supporting us and setting up the Hangouts and sharing it. And it's going to be available on YouTube.
If you have other questions, please write to us. I think it's really important that you ask every question possible if you feel the need of more explanations before applying. But also, I think it's a thing of having the courage and believing in yourself that you can actually do this job, because if you're thinking that you want to apply, then that means that you are a resourceful person, and I think we could really do a good thing together. So just do it.
So you can email us on chairs@iglyo.com. I realize that might be the opposite way around, but I can't write backwards.
That's okay.
Cool. Bye.
Don't forget, 15th of October is the deadline, so apply.
Apply. Email us, apply.